May the 1st, 1690, a Jacobite army awoke here to the sounds of screams, thundering hooves and musket fire rolling through the mist coming off the River Spey. What would follow would be the last action of the first Jacobite uprising. An action based upon a daring night march, intelligence gathering and exhausted troops marching through the Scottish Highlands. This was the Battle of Cromdale. Let's rewind a little bit. Sir Hugh Mackay, survivor of the government forces at Killiecrankie, had appointed Sir Thomas Livingstone, a Dutch commander who'd served with the Scots brigades over in the Low Countries, as commander of the Inverness garrison. He was to shadow Sir Thomas Buchan, the new Jacobite commander, who had joined and replaced Sir Alistair Cannon, who'd fought at Dunkeld, where the Jacobites had fought fiercely but failed to secure a victory after very bloody street fighting, and the government forces held the day. They shadowed each other around these highlands, neither side gaining a massive advantage, but the Jacobites were on the cusp of recruiting more men, largely through threat of fire and blackmail to the men who lived in this area. The intelligence was that this army could gain in strength and was begun to become a new threat. Sir Thomas Livingstone left Inverness on the 30th of April 1690, having received intelligence that the Jacobites were in the Strathspey area. They marched 8 miles to Brodie, near Brodie Castle, and there enters into the scene Ludwig Grant of Grant, head of Clan Grant, a Highland chieftain, but a fierce supporter of the Williamite cause. He would remain loyal to the crown, and his descendants later on would do likewise for the Hanoverian succession, raising Highland independent companies to support against the Jacobite cause as late as 1745 during the Culloden campaign. Grant approached Sir Livingstone not only with the promise of support of his clan, but also with vital intelligence narrowing down the position. The Jacobites were camped at Cromdale, and Grant knew a way through the glens that would get them to there without being seen. Battle could be joined with surprise as the main element in the Highlands. Around 2 in the morning, Ludwig Grant guided the government forces down the glen, concealed from view. They crossed the river here where there was a small ford guarded by Jacobite pickets. The dragoons skirmished with them, but that was a diversion for a ford further upstream, where the main government army was able to cross and surprise the Jacobites lying in camp. It was later written that the Jacobites ran here and there, not knowing which way to turn, and the massacre of them began. Livingstone's horse and dragoons charged up, still catching the Jacobites asleep. Perhaps hundreds of Jacobites fell, either rousing, asleep, or fleeing. However, hope was not completely lost, as the Camerons and the Macleans rallied, mostly in just shirts, with their targes, their shields and their swords, and gathering together a close group of clansmen forced a close rearguard action, holding off the government horse. However, this is when Ludwig Grant of Grant steps back in, having not only brought the government troops here, he brings together his clansmen that he has brought, estimated about 700, and charges into the Jacobite clansmen. So we have a rare case of Highlanders on Highlanders within the larger battle. That's able to push them off, and the Grants hold this area of the field, and then they push on towards a rearguard action in a Scottish castle. About 50 Jacobites hold up here at Lethendry Castle. This is all that remains. Sir Thomas Livingstone offered them quarter, but they opened fire upon 2 grenadiers, killing them. Then Lieutenant Carleton crawled closer, what's now a farmyard, with a satchel of 4 grenades, posting at least 2 of them through the door. At that point, the Jacobites decided that they might want to surrender, but Livingstone thought they were such scoundrels that they should actually be killed, but later changed his mind, realising that some of them were probably former colleagues from the Scots brigades. They came out and surrendered, with one of their commanders missing part of his nose. This is all that remains of Lethendry Castle. Not much remains, but you can understand how the Scottish classic tower castle would have presented some fortifications to the fleeing Jacobites, or at least a stop short for the troops pursuing them, and offered some sort of fortification in order to survive the night. Within minutes of the charge, it was devastation. The dragoons and horsemen, having covered the Spey there, set about the Jacobite camps here in the foreground near these farms. It was such devastation that Buchan escaped without his hat or sword or coat up that hill, and Alistair Cannon of Dunkeld, commander, he fled along beneath us wearing only his nightshirt. The dragoons fell upon them again, killing around 400 Jacobites and capturing about 100 more. Jacobites fleeing up the hills, with one story going, they fled as far as the top of those woods, where they were rallied by a lone piper, whose name is sometimes recorded as Hamish and sometimes as not known. The legend definitely giving way to the story. And there he leant against a stone in the far distance. It's just going to be out of our time today, in order to rally his troops with musket balls whizzing around him. But Rusty and I managed to get up here. It's a great view over Cromdale and Grantonos-on-Spey. The Jacobites mostly were split apart on these fields, the Hocks of Cromdale. However, the story wasn't quite over, and a few bands of the Jacobites remained. For that tale, we're going to completely change position and visit a very fierce Grant woman. Cromdale doesn't quite finish the whole of the 1690 campaign. This is the castle on Loch an Alin, another Grant stronghold. I'm going to do a separate short video about that, but a castle on a loch that saw just a bit more of the campaign. I don't often do this, but if you enjoy my adventures over these battlefields, often with Rusty, all I ask is that you give it a like, subscribe to the page, and hey, if you want to, recommend it to some friends and help this channel grow. I really appreciate that too, so we can keep this history going. Thank you.